Welcome back to the Cowboy Bros podcast. Jason and I are fresh off the segment regarding the vaccine mandate from the Biden administration. Um, Obviously tied up in Supreme Court hellscape. Yeah, yeah, we are far too pro business as a country for that to be as nearly as unethical as you as you were proposing it was going to be. Um, in the third segment, we're going to be talking about something that apparently Jason says I never talk about, but I could have sworn this is probably the fourth or fifth baseball topic we've had on this show. So,
Compared to NFL,
respectfully, sir,
compared to football and basketball, though, count it up.
hey, hey, if we've discussed it 5 times, damn it, obviously it struck a nerve.
I feel like we talked about hockey more than baseball. So
Oh my god, yeah, maybe because of Vander Kane. Anyways, in this segment, we're going to be talking about the fact that uh, the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame nominations are in, and as impressive as they are for who got in, it's almost as impressive for who didn't get in. Jason, you want to you want to come up with the breaking news? Who was actually not who was actually appointed to the Hall of Fame today?
yeah, so we're recording this on Tuesday. So the nominations were announced like an hour before, or rather, the results were announced an hour before we actually started recording. We knew that going into it, but essentially, in the year of 2022, the Baseball Hall of Fame only elected one person this year into the Hall of Fame, which is more than last year. If you guys remember, nobody got in last year in 2020. But this year, David Ortiz, the man himself, was nominated to the Baseball Hall of Fame. You need 75% of the votes to get in. He received 77.9%. Um, Now, obviously, we're mentioning who did get in. I hate to say it, and I know the focus should be on who actually got in, but unfortunately, what's going to happen is, talk about who didn't get in particular, four people in particular. That's kind of the story here. But I'll let you go into that.
Oh, we're gonna talk about it. Barry Bonds, all-time home run leader, not getting in. Roger Clemens,
All-time Cy Young Award winner, not getting in.
uh, Sammy Sosa. Is it white Sammy Sosa or is it black Sammy Sosa? We got to confirm.
Well, his playing career was all black Sammy Sosa. So the vampire Sammy Sosa didn't come out till after the fact. So which maybe which
And
maybe
of course,
which maybe why all this happened. Had he gotten a Hall of Fame, maybe he wouldn't be doing all this stuff. So who knows?
yeah, man, y'all stressing this man out over the last 10 damn years, whether or not he gonna get in. Shame on y'all.
He was tired of being a black Dominican. He
Yeah.
wanted to be white.
Yep. Yep. He was trying to opt out of the Afro Latin situation. Anyways, uh, also longtime ace pitcher Kurt Schilling, uh, rounding out 58.6%. All those dudes were in their 10th and final year of eligibility. So that really begs the question. Why is and listen, I love David Ortiz. So congrats to that man. But Baseball Hall of Fame to me feels incomplete without those guys. At least Barry Bonds. To me, Barry Bonds was going to get in the Hall of Fame before he took steroids anyway. It's almost like two Hall of Fame careers. It's like Kobe with the number 8 and then Kobe with the number 24. Barry Bonds before steroids and Barry Bonds after steroids. Both those guys deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. You disagree?
I don't necessarily agree fully with the whole he was going to be in the Hall of Fame before he got to the Giants. As far as his on the field case, obviously you mentioned earlier he's the all-time career home runs leader. That's his big thing as to why he should be in the Hall of Fame is that. And obviously pre-Giants, he wasn't anywhere close to getting that record. I think we both can agree, and anyone listening to this that knows baseball, would agree that he was getting that number at his current, you know, ascension with the Pirates. And I keep saying the Giants Pirates because, most people believe he started the steroid stuff in '01, which I believe is around the time he went to the Giants. So, but like you said, that's why he's not in the Hall of Fame. That's why Clemens isn't getting in. That's why Sammy Sosa's not getting in. There's also other guys on the list as well that aren't getting in. That haven't got to their 10th year on the ballot. But those three specifically, that's why they're not getting in because of the PED stuff and the cheating stuff. Kurt Schilling, that's a different situation. But he also is on last year's ballot not getting in. So
Why is it a different situation?
because he
Not saying you're wrong, but can you tell more about
sure
that?
because his situation wasn't because of PEDs or anything like that. It was more of the fact that people thought he was a borderline Hall of Famer, maybe, but more so people felt like he was more of a jerk. Now with him being on that line, which personally I feel like if you're on the line, you're not a Hall of Famer, frankly. But with him being on the line, combined with being considered a jerk, that's probably why he didn't get enough of the push to get in the Hall of Fame. He was really close. In 2020, it was above 70%, like 71 and some change. So he was close, and people would think, okay, he can get enough this year to get in. He only needs another 4%. But just the opposite, he actually went way down. He only had 58.6% this year, so he went way down. So that's why I say he's different than the other three, because his situation wasn't PEDs, it was just that.
You a jerk, is what you're saying.
I mean, people always said the same thing about Barry Bonds. He was a jerk, but they also had the PED stuff to fall back on. Which, by the way, I will say this, and I'm not defending Barry Bonds because people, I can tell you, I never liked the dude anyway. Again, don't know him personally, just from what he put out there in the media. One thing I do want to point out is I don't believe Barry Bonds ever actually tested positive as far as a baseball test for PEDs. But the one, again, not saying you shouldn't get in the Hall of Fame either. One thing I found interesting is that you know who else actually at least once tested positive for PEDs? David Ortiz. So I find an article, we can talk about that later, but I just find it interesting that these three we just mentioned, Sosa, Bonds and Clemens aren't in because of their PED stuff or cheating. But David Ortiz once tested positive. Now there's some murkiness involved with it, so maybe that might be his saving grace. Or the fact that people actually like David Ortiz might be the saving grace. But I just find it interesting how we're damning these three, but not another guy who tested positive. So, your thoughts, sir?
I think that's what it boils down to. There's a reason Barry Bonds ain't in a damn analysis chair with the MLB network, and Ortiz is living it up on Fox. He's a more engaging guy. Ortiz was more fun to probably follow when he played. Bonds didn't want to give these motherfuckers the time of day. That the specter of the fact that people thought, he didn't kiss the media's ass. He didn't want anything to do with it. And so he's paying a price for that. I think a lot of times it's not what people do, is whether or not you got a good rapport with them. And so is Ortiz getting the benefit of the doubt? Probably. I think that's a good detail if you're mentioning it.
I did mention it.
Because obviously, enough of these voters are like, nah, that's all right. We're not going to hold that against you. I also didn't know that you need damn near 3/4 to be in the hall.
Yep.
Like that's you. I mean, that's insane. That's what it takes. That percentage is what it takes to get in the Hall of Fame. It's probably harder to get there in that hall than any of the others. Right?
I mean, is it really insane though? I mean, think about it. We're talking about the guys who are supposed to be the greatest players ever to win the game. And so I mentioned, like for example, I mentioned Kurt Schilling. I feel like he's not a Hall of Famer or borderline at best. I've always said that when you bring up a player, and this is in any sport, you know who's a Hall of Famer or not. Now you're a casual baseball guy, but I'm sure there's certain players I can name to you right now that, and you'll say, "Are there?" I'll ask you, "Are they a Hall of Famer?" And you'll immediately say yes. My thought is, if you have to think about it even for a millisecond, then they're not a Hall of Famer. Simple as that. So if I ask any baseball guy who knows anything about baseball, is Kurt Schilling a Hall of Famer? And frankly, if there's any really debate on it, then I feel like you're not a Hall of Famer. And I'm just speaking of the merits of the game, not PED stuff, nothing else. If the merits of the game, you have to debate whether you're not a Hall of Famer, then you're not a Hall of Famer. So I feel like the 75% isn't really that, too much to ask. I mean, put 4 people in a room who know baseball, and if you can't get 3 of them to say you're a Hall of Famer, then you probably aren't a Hall of Famer.
I also think a lot of this is so much of what drives Major League Baseball is that the personalities. And so for many people, I think of a guy like Mitch Albom, right? Who has made it clear, like, I don't like that motherfucker. I don't like this fucking player. Like that part of that element of the voting process, it can't be understated, right? And so that's why I'm saying that a lot of this has to do with the fact, yeah, maybe people don't like Barry Bonds, but if it's no longer a meritocracy, and not to mention, I was never one of those guys who were like, oh, we need to put an asterisk by this. Listen, a home run's a fucking home run.
Well, I don't
Okay.
agree with that completely, but okay.
Especially when you got 30 different ass ballparks. Like there's no standardization, okay? So a home run's definitely a home run. But I feel weird. It feels very bizarre that much of what made Major League Baseball what it was after the lockout, and ironically, guess where we are? Another lockout. Cooperstown is basically gonna snub its nose at the era that brought baseball back from the brink.
Well, that's not a reason to put people in the Hall of Fame, though.
It's all, yeah, but they're also making it a reason to not put people in the Hall of Fame, which is what I'm arguing.
So, okay, maybe, but I can see the people's point as to why that individual shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, because you feel like which I definitely see your point when it comes to the whole asterisk thing, and I see people's point when they say a home run's a home run, even though I don't agree with that. But I guess if you're, and I don't want to use the word purist because who's really a purist? But I guess what the problem is that it's not even necessarily, I think, for some people that you're comparing the PED guys to other people or themselves rather, or to the records. You actually are comparing them to people you think did it the right way, or did it the right way, whatever. You know what I mean? And that's why those individuals aren't going to get in at this point. I mean, Barry Bonds and Clemens probably had the best shot to do it. They were in the high 60s for voting. Um, they just couldn't get enough votes. And now in Bonds' case, maybe if he wasn't a jerk, or actually vice versa, maybe if he wasn't on the PEDs, yeah, he might have gotten in. If he was just a jerk and not the PEDs, he might have gotten in. He might have got that extra 7% of votes to get in. But I tell you something else, Terrence. Conversations like this are probably going to continue for another 9 years. You want to know why?
Why?
Because on this year's vote, there was a certain player on the ballot for their first time. One Alex Rodriguez, someone who very notably was busted for PEDs way back in 03, I believe it was. And now he's someone who has almost 700 home runs. So this year he's on the ballot. He only received 34.3% of the votes. Now, by comparison's sake, Barry Bonds never got less than that. So that 34.3% that Rodriguez got this year was less than Bonds had at any point of Bonds' 10 years on the ballot. So this argument is probably going to continue for another 9 years with him on the ballot. because he's not going to get the 5% to fall off the ballot, so he's going to be on it for the next 10 years, for the next 9 years. Um, so I have a question though for you. This is specifically for you. So obviously you're a fan of the Cubs. You're a Cubs follower, and obviously Sosa is a Cub. He's a Cub guy. What are your thoughts specifically about Sammy Sosa not getting in the Hall of Fame?
My thoughts are Sammy Sosa had what, like 4 or 5 fantastic years as a Cub. He absolutely has some shortcomings. I would not have called him necessarily like a natural leader of a franchise, but he made baseball fun, and him along with McGuire brought baseball back from the brink, man. Because the casual fan was fed the fuck up with baseball. That's the thing that strikes do for sports leagues is that the average fan does not want to get into this bullshit between players and owners. And the only thing worse than feeling bad for motherfuckers that are making millions is feeling bad for motherfuckers that make billions with your tax money. So to me, I would love to see another Cub in the Hall of Fame, obviously. A big chunk of my childhood was based off seeing Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire duel it out over the course of a year. It's probably the most I've ever paid attention to baseball.
1998.
So that was the year. That was the year that I had the Super Nintendo with the King Griffey junior baseball game. And yeah, dog, like that's probably the most I ever cared about baseball. Okay. So for Cooperstown to effectively, snub and thumb its nose at one of its late 90s saviors, yeah, feels a little odd.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that specifically about Sammy because again, you follow the Cubs and whatnot. You also mentioned Mark McGwire, another guy who not in the Hall of Fame because his PED situation. Somebody had more home run or 500 home runs, which is that benchmark to get in the Hall of Fame as a hitter. Um, so you had the connection to Sammy Sosa. I had a connection a little bit with the Mark McGwire side of it because I was actually a Mark McGwire fan on the field. Wasn't really an A's fan technically. Was never a Cardinal fan, but I did live in Southern Illinois by St. Louis during the Cardinal years. So I was down there during that year, and also in Southern Illinois, like way down in Carbondale as well. And I remember I was actually in Carbondale when he hit the 61st home run, 62nd home run. Um, but so I kind of agree with you a little bit. It's very weird to see those two guys in particular not in the Hall of Fame. Like I said, in 1998, they helped bring back ratings for baseball that summer. You mentioned that you paid so much attention to baseball more than you ever had that year. I'm sure there are millions of people that probably could say the same thing. And that is what it is. It is unfortunate that they're potentially going to have another labor dispute, and baseball is supposed to report to spring training here next month in February. So hopefully they can get that squared away. But yeah, it is very interesting. The era of baseball that you and I grew up on, a lot of the big stars aren't going to get in. I mean, so many guys from the era reached 500 home runs, and they're not getting in. Bonds, Sosa, McGwire. I mentioned A-Rod. We'll see if he gets in. Doubt it. Gary Sheffield, Manny Ramirez. All those guys aren't getting in. I'm sure there's others. Rafael Palmeiro. All those guys aren't getting in. They hit the benchmark of the 500 home runs that we all love to see all during our era, but none of them are getting in because they were taking the shots in the cheeks. So, I guess I shouldn't say all of them. They could have been taking the pills, whatever, but you know what I mean. I know for a fact McGwire was in the stall with Canseco shooting each other up. I know that for a fact. Not because I was there, because it was in the book. So
because you were with them and shooting in the stalls. Is that where we're going with this?
as cool as it might be to say that I was hanging out with Conseco McGuire, I don't think that's the scenario I want that story to be told. So, unfortunately, that didn't happen. But yeah, it's that really interesting. Baseball is my favorite sport. The '90s baseball, my favorite decade. Obviously, that's when I was growing up. So it's very interesting to see that a lot of the stars that hit the 500 plateau mark and played during that time frame, they're not getting in. And some of these guys might get forgotten. Which hey is what it is. So
I don't think these guys are going to get forgotten. I think if anything, Cooperstown is going to stand out for not having them. I don't think they're going to be forgotten
well, not so
necessarily.
much Bonds, obviously, because he still has that claim to fame, being the home run leader. Not him. Maybe not Clemens, maybe not, but Schilling, Sosa. Like I said, Sheffield's going to fall off eventually. A-Rod's going to be out there because he's on TV and everything. I think actually Gary Sheffield is too. But that's what I mean. These guys aren't making any relevancy when it comes to staying in the media. So this Hall of Fame stuff for them is going to go away. Bonds, like I said, will be the exception. But all these other guys like Ramirez, Sosa, Palmeiro. Now that they're off the ballot, well, Ramirez is off the ballot, but they're not getting in. Once all these guys are off the ballot, at some point they're going to get forgotten about because they're not playing baseball anymore. They're not on TV, as an analyst. They're not on the Hall of Fame vote. So other than some random trivia question comes up about that happens to be, they happen to be the answer, they're going to be forgotten. Like I said, Bond's the exception because he can get brought up all the time because he still has 700 plus home runs. You know, um, yeah, just my thought on that.
Okay. That concludes our segment on the Hall of Fame, or dare I say, the Hall of Shame. Coming up next, we'll give our final thoughts and we'll wrap up the show. Coming up, Cal Power Pros.